Dawanawanga guys, welcome back. So, this past weekend, I went to go see Revenge of the Sith in theaters, and it's been 20 years since the release of Revenge of the Sith, and it's been 20 years since I've seen it originally in theaters. Now, I've watched this movie probably hundreds, if not over 1,000 times over the last 20 years, and seeing it again in theaters was such an awesome feeling, but it was so much more enjoyable for me this time because there were things I knew that I didn't know when I originally saw this film. So I wanted to share a couple of these things that I now know about Anakin that maybe you didn't know, that just for me made the film so much more fulfilling. So here's a few things you didn't know about Anakin in Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. Now, we all know that Anakin had an obsession with becoming a Jedi Master by the time Episode 3 comes around. Now, in the movie, this works. It really just looks like a hunger for power, a thirst for more, greed, and it works within the context of the movie. But when we look at the Revenge of the Sith novelization by Matthew Stover, it reveals so much more. What it reveals is that Anakin wanted to become a master so that he can gain access to the restricted section in the Jedi archives, where he hoped to find knowledge that could help him save Padme. And in the Revenge of the Sith novelization, in Chapter 17, Matthew Stover writes, "The thought of Padme lying cold and dead at his feet had lodged in his heart like an ice crystal. He needed to learn how to stop people from dying, and the archives held secrets only masters had access to." So Anakin specifically links his desire for master status with gaining full unrestricted access to the Jedi archives. He believes that somewhere in this forbidden knowledge, there might be force techniques to prevent death, and that's exactly what he's desperate for. And there's a couple other things that back this up as well. In Star Wars Secrets of the Jedi from 2019, it's presented as an in-universe book, narrated from Luke's point of view, but it confirms everything that we're talking about here. In the book, it says, "The rank of Master granted Jedi access to the deepest secrets of the archives, including ancient and controversial knowledge forbidden to knights and Padawans." So only Jedi Masters could gain access to this. So this was something that was very, very controversial that even a Jedi Knight couldn't gain access to because they weren't trusted with this information. It was too dangerous. Another source that backs this up is the Jedi Path, a manual for students of the Force from 2010. This is another in-universe guide, and it says certain holocrons and scrolls concerning the dark side are sealed within the archive's vault. Access granted only to council masters. So official lore across multiple sources confirms that only Jedi Masters could study the most powerful and dangerous secrets within the archives. But because Anakin wasn't granted a master status, and because the Jedi didn't explain themselves clearly, Anakin believed that they were actively plotting against him. This in turn made him turn to Sidious instead. So straight from the Revenge of the Sith novelization again, during the Galaxy's Opera House scene, when Palpatine is tempting Anakin by offering him forbidden knowledge, he tells him, as we all know, the dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural. This is a line that's straight from the movie, and this is where Palpatine is setting the hook. But then a little bit further into their conversation, in the novelization, he tells him, "The Sith know ways of the Force that the Jedi do not dare to consider. Knowledge forbidden to you by the Jedi." Right after this in the novel, Anakin's inner thoughts are revealed. The Jedi had no knowledge of how to stop death. Only the Sith knew. He would have to embrace the dark side and become stronger than any Jedi has ever dreamed of being if he wanted to save Padme. So Palpatine tempts Anakin by pointing out that the Jedi are withholding vital knowledge, knowledge that could save lives, which we know, even beyond Padme, is something that Anakin is very serious about when it comes to his mother, when it comes to the clones, when it comes to the people he fights for in the Clone Wars. Anakin has a superhero syndrome. He has to save lives. He has to help people. And Palpatine leans right into this. And he explicitly frames it as forbidden knowledge that only the Sith dare to learn. Now, Anakin, already frustrated by the Council denying him master access to the restricted archives, sees Sidious as the only path left to save Padme. And what's really interesting about this is that Palpatine may be telling the truth. Now, we know that Plagueis did experiment with this and have some level of success if we read the Darth Plagueis book. However, in the reference book Star Wars Book of the Sith from 2012 by Daniel Wallace, it says, Sith teachings include rituals and force techniques that manipulate life and death. Knowledge long purged from the Jedi archives or locked in the holocron vaults, accessible only to masters. So we don't know if this information exists in the archives or not. The Sith don't know, Anakin doesn't know. This could all be a wild goose chase for information the Jedi don't even have. So again, Palpatine's temptation directly targets the exact thing Anakin wanted, but was denied by the Jedi Council. Anakin's mindset is, if the Jedi won't let me save her, maybe the Sith can. Is it so hard to believe that when Palpatine tells Anakin, only through me can you achieve a power greater than any Jedi, that he believes it? Now, this next piece of information I've seen a few people talk about very recently, but I'm seeing that a lot of people didn't know it, and a lot of people really pulls on their heartstrings. It kind of goes along with the idea of Anakin not becoming a Jedi Master, but it takes it a step further. And that is that Mace Windu was planning to grant Anakin the rank of Jedi Master, but only after the arrest or removal of Chancellor Palpatine from office. So we know the famous scene, you're on this council, but we do not grant you the rank of Master. Now, this scene plays out the exact same way in the novelization. However, later, after Anakin tells Mace Windu that Chancellor Palpatine is a Sith Lord, we get a little insight to Mace Windu's thoughts. Now, this is a really cool moment for me because we know that the relationship between Anakin and Mace is not the best one. And Anakin just goes directly to him after he learns all this information about Palpatine. He clearly thinks to himself, who's the only person around? Yoda's on Kashyyyk. Obi-Wan is going after Grievous on Utapau. Who is the strongest Jedi I know that needs to hear this information? And he goes straight to Mace Windu. He does what he's supposed to do. And after this scene, we get some insight into Mace Windu's thoughts. So Mace begins to reflect internally as he's heading over to Palpatine's office to arrest him. And the quote that comes right from the novelization is, if Anakin could be brought to arrest Palpatine, he would be recognized as the greatest Jedi of his generation. His reward would be a seat among the Masters, and perhaps even Mace's own place at their head. Now, this is a quote directly from the book in chapter 21. The meaning behind this is that Mace planned that if Anakin helped them lawfully remove Palpatine, he would absolutely be made a master. Mace even thought that Anakin might succeed him someday as head of the council. However, Anakin didn't know this, and tragically, Anakin's fear of losing power and trust pushed him straight into Sidious's trap before Mace could reward him. Now, the tragedy of it all is that if Anakin had been patient and trusted Mace just a little bit further than he had when he initially told him about Sidious, and he trusted the council, and he trusted himself, he would have gotten everything he wanted. He would have obtained the rank of Jedi Master. He would have obtained ultimate recognition and respect, likely even leadership of the Jedi Order someday, being as powerful as he is. And ultimately, and most importantly for him, Padme would have lived, because he would have never turned to the dark side, which we know inevitably caused her death. He could have had it all. Mastership, glory, respect. Instead, he had only ashes and silence. Instead, he lost it all by siding with Sidious out of fear and desperation. Now, following Anakin Skywalker's fall to the dark side, after killing Mace Windu, after pledging his allegiance to Darth Sidious, after marching on the Jedi Temple, after killing the Separatist leaders on Mustafar, gets us to my favorite fact about Anakin Skywalker and Revenge of the Sith that a lot of people don't know. And if you made it this far in the video, this is your payoff because this is such a cool thing to know. And it's that when Anakin and Obi-Wan fight on Mustafar, Anakin hadn't slept for 3 days. And this is quoted right from Matthew Stover in the Revenge of the Sith novelization in chapter 22. Matthew Stover writes, "He hadn't slept in days. He couldn't remember when he'd last eaten. He couldn't remember when he'd spoken to anyone besides Padme and Palpatine. Sidious," he reminded himself, Sidious, and Obi-Wan. There was no one left. He was all alone now. This section happens right after Anakin wipes out the Separatist leaders on Mustafar and is waiting for Obi-Wan and Padme. Now, I want you to really think about this. Think about how you feel when you stay up too late and then have to get up for work in the morning. Think about how mentally and physically exhausted you are. Now, Anakin had been up for 3 days, no sleep, 3 days and 3 nights with no food and no sleep. And this is after marching on the temple, fighting countless Jedi in hand-to-hand combat, flying to Mustafar, killing the Separatists. So a lot of physical and mental anguish and energy used up by time Obi-Wan gets there. And he still puts Obi-Wan on his heels. He still fights the way he fights and gives Obi-Wan a run for his money. And this is what I love so much about the book, is that it emphasizes Anakin's physical and emotional collapse. He's exhausted, he's starving, he's isolated, and he's completely psychologically shattered by the time Obi-Wan comes. It says that Anakin had not slept in days, meaning at least 2 full days. And with the travel to Mustafar, it's likely 3 by the time the final duel comes. He couldn't even remember basic needs like eating or real human conversation outside of his closest ties, which were Padme, Sidious, and Obi-Wan. So by the time Anakin duels Obi-Wan, he's running on complete exhaustion, physically and mentally. And that partly explains why he fights so brutally, recklessly, and ultimately loses. He's running purely on the dark side, like a drug. In a direct quote from the novelization, Matthew Stover writes, "Obi-Wan barely recognized him. The Anakin Skywalker he had known was gone, burned away, consumed by the dark side. The creature he faced was only a shell of the man he had loved, a shell filled with seething lava and the emptiness of the void between the stars." And then as the fight begins, we're provided with another direct observation from Obi-Wan. Stover writes, "The once graceful and poetic form of Anakin's lightsaber combat had become a whirling hurricane of power, all brute strength and rage, all fury and ferocity, leaving no space for measured tactics or caution. It was as if Obi-Wan was fighting a stranger." I love this line because so many people will argue Obi-Wan defeated Anakin because he knew Anakin, because they knew each other's style. They'd fought by one another's side for so long. But in this direct quote from the book, it reveals, no, Obi-Wan didn't recognize this person. The way Anakin was fighting was completely different from the way he normally would. This was like a wild, uncaged animal. And Anakin had Obi-Wan on his heels. Now, the part of him not sleeping for 3 days, the piece I love about that is if Anakin fought with that ferocity and that level of unpredictability to the point where Obi-Wan could barely keep up with him, which you can't argue watching that fight, what would have happened had he been well rested? Would he have been thinking more clearly and maybe Obi-Wan would be able to turn him back? Or if he had been more physically rested, would he performed at a higher peak? Would he performed better and beaten Obi-Wan? It's a question that I don't think any of us will ever be able to answer, but it's so interesting to know that Anakin was still able to perform at that level and fight with that ferocity after not sleeping for 3 days when most people would be completely spent. What this shows us is that Obi-Wan physically and spiritually sees that Anakin is almost unrecognizable. By the time he gets to Mustafar, the question is asked, hey, Obi-Wan kind of goes right for the throat. He just starts throwing shade at Anakin as soon as he's on that landing platform. Well, that's because he looks at Anakin and he doesn't even see the kid that he used to know. This guy is physically and spiritually unrecognizable. And Anakin's fighting style has changed. It's no longer thoughtful or controlled. It's just coming from pure exhaustion, anger, and despair, exploding outward, directed 100% at Obi-Wan. So guys, these are only three little details that are revealed from the novelization of Revenge of the Sith. If you've never read the book, I highly recommend you read it or you listen to it on Audible. It makes Revenge of the Sith so much more fulfilling and it provides so much more depth. It is truly a character study of Anakin Skywalker. It's such a beautifully written book and it provides us so much more information into the thought process and into the mind of this character that we all love. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more content like this. And let me know if you knew any of this information, or maybe there's something I didn't mention that you think is really interesting from the novelization or another source material that isn't in the movie. And drop it in the comments below. See you guys around.